Oftentimes people come up and say, hey Bruce, are you really that good? I said, well, if I tell you I'm good, probably you will say I'm boasting. But if I tell you I'm no good, you know I'm lying.
Hey guys, in today's video we're going to address a few things related to Bruce Lee, such as, is he really better than all these other guys like Jet Li, Sammo Hung, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Donnie Yen, etc.? And we're also going to address like the character assassination that seems to be going on with Bruce Lee lately, and we're also going to talk about his portrayal in that Quentin Tarantino film. My guest today, by the way, is a Jeet Kune Do expert, Tommy Carruthers. He had dedicated his life to the art, so he knows a few things about Bruce Lee and a few things about Jeet Kune Do. Check out his website, by the way. He does offer training courses in Jeet Kune Do, and he's also got a YouTube channel. I will link them both in the description below. Anyway, please help support the channel. Hit the like button, subscribe, share the video if you got any Bruce Lee friends out there. And with that said, let's get to the video. Here, let me ask you this. And I seen this. This was in like a newspaper article from just a couple years ago. And here's a quote I wanted to ask you about. You said Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, Van Damme, who's my favorite, by the way, Jet Li, and Donnie Yen, they couldn't tie Bruce Lee's shoelaces. What's that all about? Why do you think that?
I don't know if they have that term in the States, but here that means just that they're not on the same level as Bruce Lee. You know, he's up here, you know, and there.
Do you think is Bruce Lee strictly because he's too fast, too powerful, or specifically because of techniques, or what is it about Bruce? Because I know there's this legend kind of that people think about, which, you know, there's obviously going to be some truth to it, and some of it's going to be embellished just in general when everybody, you know, talks about somebody. And because at the end of the day, like, he's a great guy, he's done amazing stuff, but he is a human being, right?
That's the thing that people forget. He is a human being, the same as you, the same as I, the same as every guy out in the street here. And you know, we all can sweat, we all can bleed.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
You know, blah blah blah. He's only a human being. But the thing that inspires me is he's kind of forward thinking and his vision, which these guys just never seem to have. You know, Van Damme, Jackie, they don't have that vision that Bruce had. They don't have the charisma, the personality, or the drive, or just that vision. They don't have that. He just says a lot of things that you probably couldn't write in paper.
What's your style?
My style? You can call it the art of fighting without fighting.
Because if you ask somebody, say, you know, man, he's just, you know, he's just got it. And that's about the best way to describe it. He's just got that thing. He's got everything in the package like that, where they've maybe got one or two. Bruce said, everything in that package there, man, he's just got it. And that's about the only way you can describe it. And in, you know, say, another 100 years' time, these guys will, maybe don't know about them, but people still know who Bruce Lee was, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why basically everybody, you know, knows his name and has heard of him.
He definitely inspired me to want to do more with my life.
But here's something that I don't really like what's going on lately. It seems like they're trying to ruin and tarnish his legacy in some way. Like, what do you think about that? There's stories of like those letters that came out from Bob Baker's son that Bruce Lee was on drugs. There's that Matthew Polly book that Bruce Lee had a mistress. Like, do we really need to think about Bruce in this regard? Because I liked it when we're just thinking of like the martial arts legend, the philosophy, creating Jeet Kune Do, being the movie star, having the whole package. Like you said, this is how we need to remember him, and that makes the world better, and he inspires people. And even in a country like Bosnia, he's literally like a symbol of peace and unity. Like, that's how we need to remember him.
He was a hero for an entire culture that had no heroes.
What do you think about like airing out all this dirty laundry lately?
Maybe if people say all these things about Bruce, it maybe brings them down and they feel better about themselves. I don't know, you know, but just what we said 5 minutes ago, Bruce is only like you or I, you know. I mean, it was only human, you know. Okay, he done these things. So has millions of other people, and have not been crucified, you know. And people smoked a lot of dope. They took a lot of stuff like that away back in the 70s. It was the in thing, you know. People still do it now. People make mistakes. You know, nobody's perfect. I've made a million mistakes. Now, if I wrote a book about Tommy's autobiography today, Tommy's a million mistakes he's made in his life. You know what I mean? We all make mistakes.
Sure.
We're all doing things wrong. We're only human. So I think they really should, you know, okay, you don't know that, blah, blah. Put it to one side, look at him as, you know, what he done for the martial arts world, what he done for the movie world. Look at the positive things he done. But on the other side, you know, he's only a human being, like everybody else.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because like, you know, you never really heard any negative things about him until maybe the last 5, or maybe some stuff started even coming out over the last 10, but really over just the last few years. So it's so bizarre because I feel like, look, we don't really need to know this. And if we do, that's fine. You could put it in a biography, but we don't need to throw a big spotlight on it. Because when you go to all these websites, like these mixed martial art websites or martial art websites, they're all talking about that stuff that's come out. And it's almost just like, the guy's been gone for such a long time now. And if this is the most recent stuff coming out, where even like you got guys in the MMA community, like you kind of mentioned a little bit, kind of, they don't even really hold Jeet Kune Do to high esteem, right? They kind of look down on it in some ways. And they're saying, well, Bruce Lee wouldn't be that great nowadays, you know, which I don't agree with. But it's weird how the narrative's kind of changing. It's almost like if you're at a funeral giving a eulogy, nobody talks about the bad stuff, because that's not how we need to remember this guy. We need to highlight and focus on the good stuff. But for whatever reason, it's just like, I don't know why. There's like a serious character assassination going on, in my opinion.
That's true.
They got to leave him alone, is what I feel.
Probably most of these people at MMA were all inspired with Bruce Lee to start with, but when all this stuff comes out, they love to pull him down. You know, that's what people love to do. You know, after Bruce died, there was, you know, if my memory serves me right, after Bruce died, Chuck Norris kind of pulled him down a bit and said a few things about him. And at the end of the day, Chuck Norris was named. He was a points champion, you know, and he was second best to Joe Louis, because Bruce wanted Joe Louis and to fight him in Way of the Dragon, or Return of the Dragon in America, and he said no. So Chuck Norris got the part in the movie. So, you know, that's how he got his big break, was through Bruce Lee. And the guy who got him the big break shouldn't be actually ripping them apart and saying, oh, Bruce was this, Bruce was that, I showed him this, I showed him that. You know, I don't believe that Chuck Norris showed Bruce anything. Bruce is on a different level for Chuck Norris. All you need to do is watch Chuck Norris kicking a shield, and it's pitiful, and watch him doing some stuff, and it's pitiful. And you look at, you know, the speed and the power of Bruce, and you go, you taught him something? I don't think so. I think he shared a lot of things with you, you know. But again, maybe it makes him feel better. I showed him how to do this, you know.
You know, it's funny about Chuck Norris, because he had said in an interview that he basically taught Bruce Lee and told him the benefits of, you know, head kicks. Whereas if you look at the timeline when they met, like Bruce Lee was doing Green Hornet, I'm pretty sure before that he was doing head kicks in Green Hornet.
That's
so
right.
I'm like, well, that doesn't really match Chuck's timeline. It's funny how stories get exaggerated or twisted in general. For example, Chuck Norris first met Bruce Lee after winning the All-American Karate Open Championships at Madison Square Garden in 1968. Prior to their meeting, Chuck Norris said Bruce Lee didn't believe in kicking above the waist, and that Chuck Norris taught Lee the various head kicks.
And I started showing Bruce different high kicks, spinning heel kicks, and jumping, spinning round kicks and stuff like this here.
As if Bruce Lee didn't perform head kicks prior to meeting Chuck Norris. However, Bruce Lee was already quite proficient in head kicks prior to 1968, as can be seen here in this scene of him playing Kato in 1966 in the Green Hornet.
It's like when people talk about later on down the line, well, they showed Bruce grappling. Well, Bruce was doing grappling and he was practicing judo in Seattle because, you know, what was the name of the guy? Was it Frank Sato? If my memory serves me right, that's the judo class that he attended. And I'm sure with Jesse there as well, there've been quite a few exchanges of judo throws and judo techniques, you know. And yet people didn't really say, I showed Bruce tons of grappling. Well, I think Bruce was, you know, I think he was well versed in it by the time he met these people.
Oh, so
everybody wants to get credit for showing him something, you know?
You think Bruce Lee was already somewhat well versed in grappling and judo before he ever met Jean LaBelle? Because that's another story.
Definitely. Well, Jesse was a brown belt in judo, and Bruce done judo in Seattle. So, and Jean LaBelle was away down this line, you know. So, you know. But I think maybe it gives people, you know, it gives them some kind of credibility. Well, I showed Bruce this, you know, or I showed him that. They go, wow, you know, well, should go and see this guy because he actually showed Bruce Lee something, you know.
And it's easy to say something too after Bruce is no longer with us, right? Because it's just like Bruce can't really say anything, so you don't really know if whatever is saying is true, because it's not like Bruce could confirm or
deny. You've got this guy who's hungry for knowledge, right?
All type of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge.
He's seeking out different people to help him, or looking at different things. He's reading tons of books. Every week he's reading tons of books, and these people say, well, I showed him this or I showed him that, blah blah blah. And you think to yourself, well, do you not think he was well versed in all this stuff before he actually met you? You know, just another thing. People want to inflate their ego. That's really what it's doing. You know,
yeah.
One impression of Bruce is there'll never be another guy like this.
Bruce Lee changed the world. It resonated not only with Asians, but it resonated with the black community, the white community.
You know, you get people who copy Bruce. I mean, I've done tons of seminars in China. I've done tons of seminars in Singapore and Korea. And the guys turn up with Bruce Lee haircuts the day Bruce Lee moves, and they copy him all the time. And I've seen hundreds of Bruce Lee lookalikes in China. I went, my God, you know. And at the end of it, I always say to them, you know, man, just be yourself.
Yeah.
It's good that Bruce has inspired you, but I was there when I was about 15 when I had hair, you know. I had the haircut a lot, you know. And you just grow up one day, you look in the mirror and you don't see Bruce Lee, you see yourself. But these guys are a lot, you know, they were a lot older than when I went through that stage when I was younger. I went through that stage when I was a lot younger.
Sure.
But these guys are maybe in their 30s and they're still thinking they're like Bruce Lee. And I'm like, just be yourself, man.
Ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do.
Yeah, Bruce Lee always talked about authenticity, being authentic. And that's one thing, actually, I always liked about Jean-Claude Van Damme, because when he was doing Bloodsport early in his career, there's like an interview. And of course, there's going to be the comparison. Hey, are you like Bruce Lee? Going to be the next Bruce Lee? He said, no, Bruce Lee is Bruce Lee. I'm Van Damme. Van Damme's Van Damme.
A lot of people are comparing you to Bruce Lee. How do you feel about that?
I think Bruce Lee is Bruce Lee and Jean-Claude Van Damme is Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So, and that's one thing why I think he made it so much higher than other people, because he was authentic and he was himself, and he was something fresh and new, combining ballet and karate and bodybuilding. That, you know, a lot of people combine bodybuilding and karate now, but nobody had it like him back then in the 80s. It's really cool.
Bruce Lee, and then Jean-Claude Van Damme.
You are next.
And then who? After Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is the next? Nobody. 24 years. Why? No next. Where the next? Nobody. Why no?
But Bruce is gone, and that's it. There's a lot of stuff been said about in the last few months. You know, it seems to have escalated with these letters, and everybody's really dying to take a pop at him and sell these things. But just as we said, he was only human. So, Tommy, how do you see Bruce is different from Van Damme, Jackie Chan, Donnie Yen? And it says, well, there's a bunch of things, but if you asked them, they'd say, man, he's just got it. But the thing that Bruce has got, and they've not got, and the same as Tyson, is Bruce has got that killer instinct, because you can see it in his eyes.
I have no fear of opponent in front of me, but I am very self-sufficient that they do not bother me. And that should I fight, should I do anything, I have made up my mind, and that's it, baby. You better kill me before.
And Van Damme's no got it.
You want me to break my leg?
Jackie Chan's no got it.
I know that Bruce Lee is the best.
And certainly Donnie Yen's not, they've no get that. It's like that 1,000-yard stare that people have in the military. It's been in the front line for too long. They just have that, you know, there's nothing there. It's the 1,000-yard stare. And Bruce and Tyson and all these people have got that killer, you know, that like, not a blink, you know, nothing. But these guys just don't have that at all, you know.
I did want to ask you about this Quentin Tarantino thing.
Right.
On that film, how they how do you feel about the movie, how they portrayed Bruce?
You know, I've watched it a few times, and the first thing that I would comment on is the guy really looks more like an Elvis impersonator than actually, you know, Bruce Lee. They could have got somebody who looked a bit better than Bruce Lee, looked a bit better than the guy they've got. You know, I would say the fighting is kind of made kind of comical, if you know what I mean. It doesn't look, it just looks comical with all the screams and all the rest of it, you know. Is the personality of the guy in the movie who's portraying Bruce, is that the way Bruce would have been? I would say there's a bit of me that judging with the people that I've met, that would say there's a bit of that personality could be right. But you've also got to take into consideration what age Bruce was when he made the Green Hornet. He was probably maybe about 25 or something, like 24.
Yeah, that's real.
So you take a typical 24-year-old or 25-year-old to now, you know, and you sit and listen to them talking, and they'd probably be the same as Bruce Lee, you know, 25 and think they know all and just full of shit, you know, that'd be it. So maybe there's a bit of the personality I like, but I think they could have actually done a better job really portraying Bruce Lee. I really do. To start off, they should get a guy that, I've met a million guys in China that look better than the guy that was in the movie, and they could have done probably a better, how can you say, rendition of JKD than this guy did, you know, and it would have made it look a bit better. So that's the kind of points that I would say with the movie, the good points and the bad points, you know. So that I can see how the family would be annoyed, because it does make him look a bit like a cardboard cutout and somebody who's got a massive ego.
Where I'm coming from is, I can understand his daughter having a problem with it. It's her fucking father, all right? I get that. But anybody else, go suck a dick.
You know, but as I said, what age was he? He was only 24 or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing to think about how, you know, short his life was, which is even more amazing with how much of an impact he's had in this world. What he died at like 32 or something, right?
32.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Like, what have most people accomplished by 32?
He's everywhere.
But here's a question, because we brought up Bruce Lee's Killer Instinct. When Quentin Tarantino was talking to Joe Rogan on his podcast, talking about, you know, the character Cliff in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, why he can beat Bruce Lee. The way Quentin Tarantino described it, he said, you know, if Cliff fought Bruce Lee at tournaments like Aaron Banks tournaments, he wouldn't stand a chance, like in a controlled setting. But as a killer who has killed men before in a jungle, he'd kill Bruce Lee. So I don't think Quentin Tarantino really gets the Jeet Kune Do philosophy in Bruce Lee's way of looking at fights with pure self-defense in mind when he thinks a fake character like Cliff would kill Bruce Lee, because he's basically saying the opposite of what you're saying, that Bruce Lee doesn't have that killer instinct.
Well, you just look at his eyes and you can see it. He's got that stare, that killer, you know, definitely. But again, Bruce is only a human being. I mean, who's to say that he couldn't be beat in that confrontation? Who knows? You know what I mean? He's only human. But when you look at where he was going with his martial art, you look at the level of training he was in, you know, it wouldn't be an easy guy to beat, that's for sure. And he was, just as he said, no, if you want to fight me, you have to be prepared to kill me. So that puts things on a different level. That's somebody who's got that killer who would just keep going.